Hey everyone, welcome back. It's good to have you here again. If you're settling in for the night, or just need something calm in the background, you're in the right place. Tonight we're diving into some stories from the Revengestories subreddit, where people share moments when they decided enough was enough and took matters into their own hands. If there's another subreddit you'd like to hear stories from, feel free to drop a suggestion in the comments below. And if you're enjoying these videos, a like or subscribe really helps the channel grow. But no pressure, just relax, get comfortable, and we'll take our time with these. Let's ease into the first one. This story is called Want to Yell at Someone Over Music? I'll Hijack Your Speaker. So, a bit of context. I work in an oil field construction setting. We have regular employees and we have contractors who come in for specialized jobs. Anyone who's had the displeasure of working with an oil field contractor knows that most of them think they're hot shit. Anyways, we're in the middle of a job, and our shop that usually has a half-dozen employee welders and laborers has tripled in population due to the addition of contractors. We've had a general rule in the shop that since most people can't agree on what music to listen to, we instead have 4 radios in each corner playing the same station so that everyone has some background noise and it's mostly tolerable. In comes this contractor with a party-sized JBL speaker. We're all working, heads down, when over top of the radio starts playing an admittedly decent work playlist. My tastes are fairly varied, so I don't care too much. I just turn my radio off so I'm not living in remix land all day. I go over to the guy, introduce myself, and chat a bit. Eventually I point at his speaker and jokingly ask him if he takes requests. He laughs and says no. Okay, no biggie. Again, it's a decent playlist. A few hours later, one of our laborers goes up to him and asks if he'd turn the music down. He doesn't care for the playlist and would rather just listen to the radio. This contractor comes unglued on him and starts off on a racist tirade. The laborer is from the Philippines, and the contractor tells him to get bent. Now this will not do. I open Spotify on my phone to connect to my Bluetooth stereo to drown him out, but to my surprise, this man has jams enabled on his account. For those who don't know, jams allow multiple people to contribute to a playlist. So I join his jam. He doesn't notice. I add a song similar to his current list. It plays. He doesn't notice. And that's when I got a mischievous grin and realized I could play mind games with him. For those of you who haven't worked in the oil field, there's 2 important things at play here. 1, oil field workers are totally straight, and any implication otherwise is grounds for a fight. And 2, they usually only listen to totally straight music. Rap, metal, some EDM, but definitely no pop and definitely no girl bands. So, every few songs the Spice Girls would start playing. He'd angrily change the song. Maybe a bit of NSYNC. Next song. K-pop Demon Hunters? Throwing his tools in frustration. Then he changed playlists. I kept dropping absolute totally straight kryptonite into his playlist. For hours. All the while, the other contractors are giving him hell because he's not playing totally straight music. After 5 hours of him raging in confusion, he turned off his speaker. This one's for you, Raul. Sometimes the smallest acts of resistance can be the most satisfying. Not violent, not dramatic, just persistent. A quiet kind of payback that chips away at someone who thought they were untouchable. And honestly, when someone goes on a racist tirade over a simple request, it's hard not to feel like they had it coming. Let's move to the next one. This story is titled, I Got an Arsehole Customer Arrested. About 15 years or so ago, I worked at a hydroponic store. We sold supplies for growing tomatoes, in quotation marks. There was one guy who came in several times. He made some larger purchases, but he was a massive jerk. One day, he wanted an exchange or refund. At this point, I can't remember the exact detail, but it was against store policy, and I declined the request. He contacts the owner, and rather than back me up, the owner capitulates and berated me for not making the transaction. The guy comes in, and now he's got an even bigger sense of entitlement. We had made some special orders for this guy, which we are required to get information from the customer, including phone number and address. And given what he had purchased, he was growing a lot of tomatoes. I take his info and call the police tip line. A couple months later, I find out he was busted with a bunch of plants. The best part was since he was found guilty, I received $500. If you're doing something illegal, don't be a dick to the people who have nothing to lose by turning you in. It's one of those situations where someone's own behavior becomes the thing that undoes them. If he'd just been kind, or even just neutral, none of it would have happened. The $500 is almost just a bonus at that point. The real satisfaction probably came from knowing that his arrogance led directly to his downfall. What do you think about that one? Was it justified, or did it go too far? We'll keep going. This next story is called Accidental Revenge, and I'm petty enough to laugh. My sister-in-law has gone feral on my husband, her other brother, and now her mom. She's essentially destroyed 4 generations of family ability to get together and has instructed her 4 adult children not to have contact with the 84-year-old grandmother or the rest of the family, cousins included. It's been a brutal 2 years. We suspect it's about money, but who knows? Brain tumor is an alternative explanation. My mother-in-law is not perfect, but basically a very sweet woman. She's giving each family a lump sum to be divided between the family members and has written out checks accordingly. My husband and I just have a son, so we 3 come out the best. My brother-in-law has 3 kids and 1 grandchild. My very fertile sister-in-law has 4 adult kids, 3 grandchildren and spouses in the mix. Total division by 11. I wish I could be there when she does the math and realizes the brother and sister-in-law she stabbed in the back get 3 times what she does. Especially me, as she is all about blood family. It's not a revenge they planned. It's just the natural consequence of how things shook out, and sometimes that's the kind that feels the most like justice. Family estrangement is never easy, and when it happens over something like money, there's an extra layer of sadness to it. But when someone cuts everyone off and then realizes they've cost themselves in a tangible way, it does bring a certain symmetry to the situation. The universe has its own way of keeping score sometimes. Let's continue. The next story is about a nephew and a gaming laptop. It's titled, "My 14-year-old nephew ruined my gaming laptop downloading hacks, then tried to do the same thing to my PC, so I'm gonna kill switch his PC." So a little backstory. My nephew decided to mess with my gaming laptop downloading hacks. They got it compromised. His mother, who is my sister, never offered to pay to get the computer fixed, so it was left compromised for years. I couldn't get into it or nothing. And then I got a PC and monitor for my 20th birthday that I saved up for so long. It was Thanksgiving this year, and he was guessing the password until he finally got it right. He was trying to download stuff on it, and I caught him before he could actually download anything. I never said nothing. I just stood there, making sure that he didn't do nothing else. But little does he know that I have a little trick that will make his entire PC and monitor stop working. All I have to do is plug in a kill switch drive that I bought, and it will shut his whole PC and monitor off permanently, logging him out of accounts, deleting accounts like Fortnite and YouTube and status. Now, this one's still in the future tense, so it hasn't happened yet, but the intention is there. It's hard to say what's proportional when family is involved, especially when it's a teenager who probably doesn't fully understand the consequences of what they're doing. But after being burned twice, you can understand the impulse. There's something about having something you worked hard for and saved for being threatened that brings out protective instincts. Whether actually going through with it is the right call is another question entirely. We can take this one slowly and move on to the next. This story is called Make Her Your Project. The person telling this story notes at the beginning, "Please note, I'm changing some minute details for sake of anonymity, but the overall premise is what occurred. Sorry for any inconsistencies as a result. I'm usually not one for revenge. I like to focus on forgiving, letting apathy roll a person out of my life and leaving the rest to the Lord. A few years ago, however, the worst year of teaching I've ever experienced proved differently. I usually teach high schoolers, but when health issues led to my return home from across the US and I needed a job as soon as possible, I was quick to snatch up a career as a 7th grade teacher after being offered the job on the spot. That should have been my first warning. It proved to be one of the hardest years I've experienced as a teacher. We were understaffed, and my department was separated into cliques between on-level and honors-level middle school teachers. I was assigned to on-level classes, but my advisor was in charge of honors classes, as was the head of the department. Thus, I was stuck at an in-between, with both groups of teachers wanting me to follow their lesson plans at weekly meetings while also excluding me in their planning, albeit unintentionally. They already had their thing and their own languages with their lesson plans they'd used for the last several years, and I was the new kid on the block. I chose to adjust my lessons according to both groups. I would listen, ask questions, and adjust my lessons according to whichever plans best fit the needs of my classes. Issues soon arose. Admin did not prove supportive. Teachers in this school were unable to send a student to the office for immediate behavior management. Rather, we filed a paper form, and the admin would meet with the student later to determine punishment. I once sent a student out for throwing a book at another, and they were sent back to my class despite their escalated behavior and anger levels. I was later scolded for sending the student and told to file directly online and wait, despite the threats the student also hurled during the altercation. The student in question was given a lunch timeout. 2 students soon transferred from my class. I would not allow issues with another student to carry into my class. Leave your drama at the door. Don't bring it in here, is a motto I try to follow to keep classes safer. I explained to the students that their pursuing these issues in my class were what resulted in consequences. If I see a situation with any form of bullying arise, I stop it. Any insult, I want it kept out of my class. When I asked the principal about additional steps due to news of the students transferring, she said it was fine and that the parents were only upset because they did not like my correcting their students for misbehavior. It was evidently not okay, as she told the reason for transfer to the other on-level teachers, and they blamed me for their class's growth. The teachers resented that I indirectly led to more behavioral struggles in their classes. I felt horrible for it, as the increased ostracization became apparent with their blatantly ignoring me at department meetings. I would ask about a lesson, and they would not reply. I relied more on the honors teacher's lessons, and my students grew as a result. That's not the petty revenge, however. One student's mother requested a transfer from one of the other on-level classes, and the student was transferred to mine. I didn't know she had requested this transfer when I noticed the new schedule, and I went to the teacher to ask about the student so I could provide support and a smooth transfer between classes. Our conversation went something like this. Me: I noticed the student is now on my roster. Is there anything I should know to help her out? What does she struggle in? Teacher: She transferred to your class? Me: Yes. So I was wondering. She stopped listening to me at this point. Teacher started laughing instead, and she walked off without an answer, waltzing right up to one of our co-workers who happened to be guiding traffic outside and saying poetic justice before walking off laughing. I felt insulted for myself and my student, and I cried once back in my room. I called my mom to cry about the further ostracization, and she gave me the best advice I could have taken in this situation. Make that student your project. Prove them wrong. So I did. I started by calling the student's mom, asking her about her child and how I could help. She sounded frantic and worried. The mom expressed the lack of support from the previous teacher, as the student struggles with focus and energy. I researched ways to help and asked other teachers about what helps the student in class. Positive reinforcement, movement, the usual that I already try to provide. I also assigned the student to weekly tutoring to help her with skills she missed in the other class. The student blossomed, scores grew, and when Teacher Appreciation Week arrived, she brought me my favorite treat of cookies and Starbucks. I clung to thoughts of her and my other students whenever days were hard during co-worker meetings or when admin failed to support me in punishing repeat offenders. Maybe I failed to connect with my co-workers, but I have students who are growing, parents who support me. I try to do the same. One student whose mom was in a car accident received Easter gifts for her girls when they couldn't make it out of town, and I tried to contact home for at least one student a week and provide a positive update, not just for the usual super students, but for those who went unnoticed as well. Then came the email. The mom of the student who transferred to my class emailed me during the last month of school, showing me a copy of a separate email she sent. I never told her about my issues with the teacher her child transferred from, but she wanted me to see the email she made for my principal and superintendent. The email was scathing. It spoke of the support the student's previous teacher failed to provide, complete with documentation, or rather, the teacher's lack thereof, and praised my guidance for the student. She discussed my avid communication and support and concluded with a statement that any district would be glad to have her, all while not knowing I had already submitted my letter of resignation. As the year closed, one of the other teachers actually came to me and apologized. A close co-worker had shared the details of the lack of support from admin in regards to the behavioral issues they'd heard of in my class, amongst other things, and I left on a higher note. I am still teaching, but my new school is better, brighter. I've received recognition, and I'm overall a happier and stronger teacher after surviving that worst year of teaching. The best revenge was being the best teacher I can be, and I'm proud of it. That one has a different feeling to it, doesn't it? Not revenge in the traditional sense. Just doing the work, doing it well, and letting that speak for itself. Sometimes that's the most powerful kind. There's something about responding to cruelty with excellence that cuts deeper than any planned retaliation ever could, and the fact that it helped a student in the process makes it even better. You can just listen along. We'll keep going. This next story is called Revenge on Noisy Neighbors. I live in university apartments that are cheap but terrible. It's one of the only places I can afford as a grad student. Just to note, the building is in a very rich area but falling apart. The building, and unfortunately my apartment, are facing a daycare. A couple things to note. The kids have outside time from 8 to 10 and 3 to 5 approximately. They play loud music for the kids outside and let them bang on things so hard we thought it was construction noise. The kids scream all day long. But not just one kid. The other day I heard like 10 all of a sudden start to scream in unison. The walls are thin and it wakes me up and disrupts work. The residents have apparently already asked them many times to try to keep the noise levels down, and they don't care. I get that these are kids, but the daycare itself could be doing a lot more to keep them quieter, starting with not blasting music, or letting them bang, or telling them not to scream in unison. So I want to take revenge. Not on the kids, but on the workers. I'm thinking of starting to play something really annoying on my speakers and pointing it at them. Maybe hard techno or profane rap or just some sort of annoying alarm sound. Any other ideas? Now, this one's still in the planning stages. It's less of a revenge story and more of a revenge thought. And honestly, it's hard to blame them. Constant noise when you're trying to work or sleep can wear anyone down. But there's also the reality that a daycare is what it is. Kids are loud. It's not malicious. It's just kids being kids. Still, the instinct to push back is understandable. Whether it's the right move is another question entirely. Fighting noise with noise rarely leads anywhere good, but when you're exhausted and your complaints have been ignored, the temptation is real. Let's move on to the next one. This story is called Banker's Revenge on Petty Jerk Customer. I worked at a bank a long time ago, in the 1980s. This guy who was a jerk customer came in and said he wanted to close his account. He had a stack of checks, and I mean a stack of checks. He had sat down and spent who knows how many hours writing out checks for 1 penny each, thinking he was getting revenge on the bank by forcing them to sit there for hours cashing each 1-cent check, one at a time, to get his $300 or whatever it was. The teller called over the operations manager. The jerk customer was looking at her, smiling smugly. He obviously didn't know that banks can pass a credit or debit to represent a check or deposit slip. I'm simplifying here. So, she makes out a debit for the total amount, hands the guy a cashier's check for the total amount, and thanks him for his business. He stormed out of there, so mad. Can you imagine spending several nights filling out checks? For you youngsters, this was before ATMs. It's one of those stories where someone goes to great lengths to inconvenience someone else, only to find out they wasted their own time for nothing. The universe has a way of humbling people like that. You can almost picture him sitting at his kitchen table, check after check, convinced he's about to pull off the perfect revenge. And then reality just deflates the whole thing in about 30 seconds. Whenever you're ready, we'll continue. This story is called Take My Hours From Me. How do you like being shut down for roaches? This happened to me when I was currently working at the restaurant I worked at for over 9 years. We had got a new management at our restaurant, but they were not at all interested in doing things the way they're supposed to be doing, and then instead they started cutting corners on everything. Which mean they were also getting rid of the older employees who knew better than they were supposed to be doing. So my hours were cut, and so were a lot of other employees that worked there for so long. Never any problems with them. They just didn't want to be bothered by old employees. After not being on the schedule for the second week in a row, I just decided to take matters into my own hands. At this point, HR was a joke, and our complaints were falling on deaf ears. They favored new management, so I had to take matters even higher. They started having a roach issue at the restaurant because of the cuts to the budget and the restaurant. It was very disgusting, yet I didn't say much because I knew they'd get rid of me before the roaches. It's also important to point out that every time I reported seeing roaches, it was never documented and it was always covered up by management. Revenge. After they did not schedule me for the third time in a row, I made sure to take it in my hands to send an anonymous message to the Department of Health of my city to let them know exactly where they'd find the roaches at the restaurant and what time to come out to avoid them being caught and trying to hide the roaches at infestation. I mean, it was terrible. There were roaches in the cheese shakers. This was a pizza place. My revenge worked. The restaurant ended up being shut down by the Department of Health and they received a B. Also say bye-bye to management for that matter too. So not only did I get a restaurant shut down and demoted to a B, but I got the managers and their managers fired too. Mess with my hours and you know what happens next time. It's one of those situations where management thought they could push people out quietly and cut corners without consequence, but someone who's been there long enough knows where the problems are. And when you combine someone with nothing left to lose with actual health code violations, management doesn't stand a chance. The fact that they were actively covering it up just makes it worse. At that point, it's not even just revenge. It's probably the right thing to do for anyone eating there. This next one is longer. It's called pro-revenge. Acting right was optional. The person begins. This happened over 7 years ago, and I think it's finally safe to tell it. For context, I'm a 54-year-old woman, very much a functioning adult and of sound mind. I used to be feral, not the cute kind. From about age 11 through my early 20s, I got into real trouble, no criminal record, but I cleaned up my act, earned a master's degree, and have been professional for over 20 years. People expect me to act right. Sometimes you have to pretend. Sometimes you don't. So my niece was graduating high school that day. The venue was packed and the parking lot was chaos until I lucked into the spot. The one at the end of the row where no one can pull in front of you or to one side of you. It felt like a tiny, private victory. I parked, beaming, and enjoyed the ceremony. Afterwards, the family planned to meet at a nearby restaurant. When I walked back to my car, I froze. Someone had pulled directly in front of me, making their own parking, and backed up so close their bumper was actually pushed into mine. Their bumper was shoved a good 3 inches into my paid-off car. My heart dropped. It was the first car I'd ever bought new. I cared for it like it was a person. I went from proud aunt to incandescent rage in 5 seconds. I knew calling the cops at a private lot wouldn't do much, and, crucially, there was another graduation after hours at the same venue. I wasn't going to wait around for whoever owned the car to come back and face me. Leaving a note felt pointless. Would anyone call me about the damage they caused? So I did something I hadn't done in years. My ghetto came out. I took matters into my own hands, acted on impulse, quick and ugly. I used the pocket knife I always keep in my car just in case and punctured the offending car's tires. The air hissed out like a release valve. Both a rear and a front tire gave way. It was loud, messy, and unapologetic. I closed my door and drove off, still hot with it, not thinking about cameras or witnesses. When I arrived at the restaurant, I went back to check my bumper, expecting the worst. A crumpled mess, a new wall mark on my shiny first car. I peered at it and my jaw dropped. The bumper had somehow popped back out like someone had pushed it back into place. It looked like nothing had happened at all. No dent, no scrape, nothing. For a long minute, I just stood there, equal parts baffled and relieved. I'd gone full tilt feral and maybe crossed a line, and then the universe, or karma, or plain old car engineering, had fixed it for me. I hadn't needed revenge after all. Lesson learned. Old instincts die hard, and sometimes you get away with it, and sometimes you don't. There's something honest about this one. The person doesn't try to justify what they did or dress it up as righteous. They just tell it straight. They reacted in a way they're not proud of, and then found out it was all for nothing. It's a reminder that sometimes our worst impulses come out when we feel violated, even when we've spent years learning to control them. And maybe there's a lesson in the fact that the damage wasn't as bad as it seemed, but the tires were still slashed, and that can't be undone. What do you think? Was it understandable in the moment, or did they go too far? We've covered a lot of ground tonight. Stories about standing up to racism in the workplace, about turning in people who had it coming, about family dynamics and money, about teachers proving their worth, about noise and banking and health inspections, and old instincts that never quite leave us. Revenge takes a lot of forms. Sometimes it's calculated, sometimes it's impulsive, sometimes it's just doing your job so well that it speaks for itself. And sometimes, like with the family inheritance, it's not revenge at all, just consequence. There's a theme running through a lot of these though. People reaching a breaking point, a moment where enough is enough, where politeness runs out, where being reasonable stops being an option. And what comes after that moment says a lot about who we are and what we value. Some of these stories end with satisfaction, some with regret, some with a kind of justice that feels earned, and some that leave you wondering if it was worth it. If you made it this far, thank you for spending this time here. If these stories resonated with you, or if you just appreciated having something calm to listen to, a like or subscribe really does help the channel keep going. And I'm always curious to hear what you think. Did any of these stories hit different for you? Was there one you related to, or one that made you uncomfortable? What would you have done in any of these situations? Let me know in the comments. I read through them, and your feedback helps shape what comes next. For now though, just rest. Let the video keep playing if you want. There's no rush. I'll be back soon with more stories, more quiet nights, more time to just exist without pressure. Until then, take care of yourself. You're doing fine.